Domestic abuse is often hidden.
For an older person experiencing domestic abuse, it's often overlooked.
For an older person who is LGBTQ+, domestic abuse is invisible.
My name's Rhys Dower. I'm the Domestic Abuse Coordinator of LGBT Foundation based in Manchester.
I'm Megan Herring and I work for Opening Doors London, where I'm the Befriending Coordinator.
I'm Peter Kelly. I am from GALOP and we are an LGBT plus anti-violence charity.
My name's Elise Freeman and I'm a wellbeing practitioner and service development lead with the Doer's Choice project. Domestic abuse is a single incident or a pattern of behaviour that's harmful from an intimate partner, an ex-intimate partner or a family member, regardless of age, gender or sexuality.
What does LGBT DV look like in short? Well, it looks like DV. So it looks like verbal abuse, coercive control, physical violence, economic abuse, sexual violence, and so on. The difference is, I think, people, because of their identities, experience that in a different way to heterosexual or cisgendered people. So, for example, one of the most common experiences is having your sexuality or gender identity used against you.
A perpetrator can also be from a family of choice, and for an older person who is LGBTQ+, their family may consist wholly or partly of a family of choice, and that is when you form close bonds and relationships with people who aren't related to you biologically or through marriage, but form very similar relationships.
There's many different forms of relationships, not just the monogamous relationship. Or we consider in polyamorous relationships, open relationships, where there's consent for other people to be in that relationship, whether that's sexually, emotionally, physically. And if we are aware of those relationships, are we considering that those people could also potentially be part of that abuse?
What's the public story of domestic abuse? It's often around a heterosexual, cisgendered woman, and that's understandable given the proportionality and what we know about the nature of gender-based violence. But the problem for older LGBT people is they're often invisible. So they're often invisible not only in their own communities, but they're also invisible to services.
With regards to general statistics, we know that it's 1 in 4 LGBT people that are experiencing abuse, and this is at the same rate as non-LGBT people. So what we know about older LGBT victims of domestic abuse is that they are underrepresented across the board with services nationally, but they're also an under-researched area. So the research that we do have really is around younger victims and midlife adult victims. So older LGBT victims of domestic abuse are really omitted in the academia. So therefore services are more targeted at younger people rather than older LGBT people.
People often think, well, why do I need to make inclusive spaces? Why do I need to have a space specifically for LGBT plus people? I'm just going to treat everyone the same. But we're not all the same. Our very histories are very, very different.
Practitioners coming into contact with older people who are LGBTQ+ are not identifying their sexuality. And this is partly because they're not asking the questions. Some of them are uncomfortable talking about sexuality with older people. Older people are often seen as asexual, and it's an important part of their identity. For an older person experiencing domestic abuse, it can take a long time for them to fully disclose the extent of the abuse. People who are working with Doer's Choice are disclosing quite high levels of abuse months after the event, and that's through building a relationship of trust with their support worker.
Professionals can respond better to the needs of LGBT people by, first of all, recognising that they are experiencing abuse. So looking for those signs and giving them space to talk and discuss. And also we find going at their own pace and not judging them, not making assumptions about their relationship, and really just giving them opportunities to make choices and decisions themselves about how they want to navigate that relationship, whether it's a family or a relationship of their own choosing.
We need to be aware of our subconscious bias when we're supporting LGBT victims of domestic abuse. We need to be making sure that we're providing that appropriate support so that we can do the best to our abilities to make sure that person is in a safe environment. We need to be taking a multi-agency approach with regards to our service users. We need to be aware of our organisational skills and our competencies and what we feel confident we're providing, but also being aware of what external organisations can provide to make sure that service users' needs are fully fulfilled.
The most important thing any service could do is to go get training for yourselves, get training for all of your staff, learn from other organisations that are doing this, so that when you do get LGBT plus people coming to you, that you do feel confident.
It's about making your service visible to LGBT victims and survivors, and that can be through images, it can be through the language you use, taking a robust anti-discriminatory practice really, and that cuts across with all staff. So, when someone walks into that service, they are going to feel that that service is inclusive and they're not going to be discriminated against or belittled because of their sexuality or gender identity.
Make sure we're asking these people about their pronouns, their gender. I know this feels uncomfortable, but this is empowering for an LGBT person to be asked these questions. We need to be aware that there are new language, there are new concepts and terms that we are using, and this can be difficult, and that's okay if we don't understand this, but use that curiosity to your advantage. Speak to your local LGBT organisations or look them up yourself, because it's that curiosity that drives change.